Recently, I've been rereading a book that I found to be very helpful in trying to understand my often very illogical mind. It's the book The Buddha's Brain by Rick Hanson and Richard Mendes, who are neuroscientists. The book combines a lot of the root teachings of the Buddha and explains them from a neuroscience perspective of what is going on in the brain. While in Buddhism, we learn to recognize that we are more than just the physical body and the brain, but that we also have a mind, which is not material, but also exists and is very deep and complex. And these three different factors also influence each other greatly. I found it helpful to learn the many factors and influences that contribute to my thoughts and emotions on a physical, biological, and emotional level. I've only read 5 chapters of the book so far, but there are several key points that I've been reflecting on that I'd like to share. First, Rick Hanson talks about 3 survival strategies that humans have developed for millions of years of evolution. He says that when any of these 3 factors are broken or threatened in any way, it triggers a response that we feel in some sort of form of distress, from mild discomfort or agitation to full-blown panic and outrage. So while these 3 strategies were effective for survival, they have also become the root of our suffering. The first one is creating separations. In order to form boundaries between ourselves and the world, and between one mental state and another. We developed to think that I am separate, solid, and independent. This idea gets reinforced over and over again, and we are taught not to question it, but to actively defend it. It makes sense that to survive, we need some general concept of self and other. Feeding another person doesn't nourish my body and keep me alive. But we have taken this view to the extreme and made it so fixed and solid that it is out of touch with reality. It is this disconnect with reality that brings so much confusion and suffering about who we really are and how things really exist. This first point is also what the Buddha taught in the 3 characteristics of suffering. The characteristic of selflessness. The truth is, everything is connected and not at all separate. I depend on countless physical things to survive. The air created by the trees and the plants, water that gets transported from clouds around the world, and food grown from the earth through the efforts of so many people are just a few very basic, obvious examples. Also, the idea that I have a separate, fixed identity and personality is totally inaccurate. Who I am comes from my culture, family background, and so many subtle and not so subtle influences. As Rick Hanson says, the apparent wall between my mind and the world is more like a line painted on the sidewalk. And yet we hold so tightly to this view of a separate self that so much pain is caused from it. The second survival strategy is maintaining stability in order to keep physical and mental systems in a healthy balance. Our bodies, especially our brains, are in a constant flux of little microprocesses, always trying to adjust to try to stay in balance to survive. When things become unstable, there is a feeling of unease and threat within our body and our brain that something is wrong and out of whack. But since the reality that everything is constantly changing, there is almost always some level of discomfort and unease at trying to hold a fixed level of stability. This is the characteristic of impermanence that the Buddha taught that also causes us to suffer. The third survival strategy is approaching opportunities and avoiding threats. We do this in order to gain things that promote offspring or escape or resist things that don't. It makes sense that we evolved to do this in order to identify threats to survive, but we have taken it to the extreme. We categorize everything into fixed boxes as either an opportunity, something good to grab and hang on to, or something bad that is to be avoided. Chasing carrots or avoiding sticks, as Rick Hanson puts it. He goes on to say that it is the negative experience, not the positive ones, that have generally had the most impact on our survival. If we missed an opportunity to eat a carrot, usually there'd be another opportunity in the future. But if we failed to miss a stick, such as a predator, then we would have been killed and not have had further opportunities to eat carrots. Because of this, we evolved to pay a lot more attention to our negative experiences, especially when it comes to our relationships with other people. In the book, he explains that over the past few millions of years that we evolved in our hunter-gatherer groups, violence was the leading cause of death for men. So it makes sense that there is a deep underlying fear and anxiety around others, that we are constantly trying to assess if they are friend or foe. On a subconscious, primal level, we are trying to gauge to see if they are going to help us raise children or kill us. One way that I've been trying to counteract this feeling of this fearful response is to remind myself of the wise words of Venerable Jigme. There are no enemies here. This is true for the vast majority of all situations and people. Rick Henson says that our brain is like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. Even though the truth is most of our experiences are probably neutral or positive. Sadly, bad information about a person carries more weight than good information. And one study has shown that in relationships, it typically takes about 5 positive interactions to overcome the effects of a single negative interaction. So this means it takes a lot of focused awareness to actually see things correctly. And I've certainly seen this in my own mind of how easy it is to focus on the negative things, especially about myself. One of the things that I've been doing to counteract this is at the end of the day to list 5 things that I rejoice about myself from the day, whether it's good qualities that I see in myself or signs of growth. And it's been really helpful in counteracting this view that I'm not good enough and to see things more accurately. And I've also gotten faster at identifying those qualities. It's also been very uplifting to do this for others, to focus on appreciating the many good qualities and efforts that I see around me on a daily basis. This is on track with what Rick Henson explains about what is happening in our brain. We have to rewire our neural networks to create and strengthen new connections. There's a saying, when neurons fire together, they wire together. We have to create the causes for becoming familiar with more realistic and positive ways of viewing things. In the book, he gives some ways to do this. The first step is to turn positive acts into positive experiences. Good things keep happening all around us, but most of the time we don't even notice them, and we often don't even feel them within ourselves. It makes a big difference if we actively look for all the positive and good things that are happening around us, and the more we look, the more we see. The second step is to savor the experience. When we acknowledge something positive and good, don't just brush it aside and quickly move on, but use it as a chance to pause and really let it sink in. Pause for at least 10 seconds, he says, and pay attention to that good feeling. Let it soak into your body and saturate your mind. This releases dopamine, which is the reward chemical in your brain, which then makes the memory stronger and the habit to do this deeper. I've been doing this a little and at first found how hard it is to pause. I can notice a positive thing, but then I so quickly move back to my normal mode of being mildly agitated and feeling pressure to do something else. But when I take the time to pause and savor the experience, it makes a big shift in my thinking and really helps me to slow down and have a wider perspective and go about the rest of my day with more ease and joy. Another topic that Rick Henson talks about is how we developed as children and how we hold on to our view from when we were little and then apply it to our world today, even though it's totally different. As children, we had little choice and control over things. Our parents and adults had more power, and we had limited resources and tools for dealing with things. The truth of our reality now is that we have many choices. We have the power is much more balanced between people, and we have many more inner resources and outer resources that we can draw on. To align ourselves more with reality and rewire our brains, we can ask ourselves these 3 questions. What options do I actually have? How can I skillfully exercise my power to take care of myself? And what resources can I draw upon? Asking these questions, we can see that there are many different ways to view the situation and that we actually have many choices of how to respond. I've really enjoyed reading this book and continuing to learn to see the endless influences that play into how I think and act. It is humbling to see the many layers, but it's also inspiring to see them and at least starting to understand them a little better. I think it's fascinating to learn about all the glitches that have developed in the brain through evolution that keep us in a loop of suffering and confusion. In combining this understanding with the fact that my mind also has countless afflictive stains and imprints from previous lives, it makes total sense that I'm confused and bumbling along in this life. Seeing this has helped me to have more understanding and compassion for myself and for others, and really seeing what we are up against. What is amazing and inspiring is that we can actually break through these harmful patterns and learn to see things more realistically. We can clear away the clouds of confusion and go upstream, nudging ourselves to evolve in a way that is more grounded with reality and a lot more freeing and joyful. And we can do this not out of a need for survival for ourselves, but out of a wiser understanding of our complete connectedness and dependence on each other and on the earth.